There is something about lost media that is so creepy, but also so interesting. When a piece of media like a TV show, a movie, or a video game gets lost in time and ultimately vanishes into the shadows, it becomes a mystery many of us want to explore. Every of them has their own story to tell, very different from another, but every one of them has the same tale about a tragic end. Today you and I will dive into the first volume of the lost and cancelled horror games, where we explore 9 games. This series will get darker and obscure as we go. Get comfy and thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will enjoy this video. The first one on the list is a cancelled game for the Nintendo Wii. Sadness was an interesting and ambitious survival horror game developed by Nibris. What really stands out and isn't used so much are the black and white visuals. The game's focus was psychological horror, facing issues with deadlines and relationship. The story of the game is quite something. The game's narrative is centered around Maria Lengiel. She is a Polish-Hungarian aristocrat. In the story, Maria was supposed to lose her consciousness after a derailment of a train. Not sure where she was heading, but it was in the Ukraine. When she wakes up, she sees men dressed in black, killing off the other survivors. Her husband and 2 other childs are already dead, and her 3rd child, Alexander, is missing. Grieving Maria goes to find her son. Later is revealed that the son is a paranoid schizophrenic and narcoleptic, and this whole story is set pre-World War I. There will be also fighting in the game where you would fight monsters from the Slavic mythology, like werewolves, vampires, but also Baba Yaga or Baba Roga depending on the region you are in. But the actual fights would be rare in the game, and the Wii U version would have more RPG-like elements in the game. Sadness was played for the end of 2007, but was pushed back to 2009. The lack of evidence of the game's progress led to widespread criticism, and it was eventually confirmed that the game was abandoned in 2010, not only marking the end of the game development, but also of Nibris as a game developer. This is a very sad story, because this sounded like a very interesting tale. I totally dig the whole gothic aesthetics combined with Slavic monsters. Resident Evil is now a massive franchise. Nowadays you would need a whole roadmap in front of you just to comprehend all the things that happen in the franchise. But this entry looks at a point in time when Resident Evil was a new franchise. Resident Evil, or Biohazard 1.5, serves as an internal designation for a prototype of Resident Evil 2 that faced abandonment in early 1997. Approaching the anticipated March 1997 release date, developers found themselves disconnected with the evolving product, opting not to deliver a game that fell short of their standards. They made the bold decision to cancel it and embark on a complete redevelopment. This is totally acceptable. We do live in an era where we get unfinished or unpolished games, so this is something we don't see so often with AAA games nowadays. In this prototype of the version, we can find numerous differences in enemies, scenery and weapons we presented, compared to the final release. The zombies were more gruesome and resilient, with the ability to crawl towards the player even with severe body damage. The appearance of the zombie was diverse, featuring variations like larger type zombies, African Americans, but also female zombies. Unique enemies such as the man spider and infected gorillas were part of this version also, but didn't make it to the final release or any subsequent games. I need to add that a man spider zombie sounds like the most rad thing out there. There were also some scenery alterations we need to talk about, like the original modern look of the Raccoon police station, which was later changed to an old building refurbished as a headquarters. The weapons available to characters Leon and Elsa differed with a wide range, the list seen on the screen because YouTube. I'm sorry. Some weapons had variations in design and functionality compared to the final version. Additionally, a metal pipe was intended as a melee weapon, and a cold python was supposed to make a return. You mentioned someone who is named Elsa. Well, Elsa Walker is a prototype to Claire Redfield. Like Claire, Elsa was a motorcyclist and a college student, with the only difference being her appearance and the fact that Elsa had no ties to established characters from the previous games. So I hope this text gives you a good showcase of the development evolution and the creative decisions made during the early stages of Resident Evil 2 production. The good news is that in early 2013, the beta/prototype version of Resident Evil 1.5 was leaked online. The next one is about a lost DLC. If you didn't know, Left 4 Dead was made by Valve Software, released in 2009, and it's a critically acclaimed survival horror shooter set in the zombie apocalypse. But why I'm explaining this to you? If you're a horror fan, you probably know about Left 4 Dead. The game follows 4 people through various campaigns, and the success of the game led to development of additional content, including community-made campaigns. However, a tie-in campaign for a 2012 horror movie, The Cabin in the Woods, was planned but eventually cancelled. The Cabin in the Woods is a horror comedy directed by Drew Goddard and written by Joss Whedon. The film satirized the horror genre by depicting a group of college students facing a zombie outbreak in a cabin in the woods that is revealed to be a part of a facility experimenting with horror movie monsters. The movie was just alright. I think I watched it back in 2013, and the movie scored somehow 7 out of 10 on IMDb. Valve's Chet Falijek, and I butchered this completely, sorry about that, mentioned that Josh Whedon and Drew Goddard approached Valve with the idea of creating a campaign based on the movie. The plan was that in the campaign of the game, players would be allowed to explore the cabin and the facility, engaging with the monsters from the movie, which sounds like a good idea. The cancellation of the tie-in campaign was a result of delays and finance struggles faced by the Cabin in the Woods, originally planned for the February 5, 2010 release. The movie's conversion to 3D and MGM's final financial issue led to indefinite delays. Valve quietly cancelled the Left 4 Dead campaign with the movie's uncertain future. After MGM's bankruptcy and the subsequent sales of the movie rights was sold to Lionsgate, The Cabin in the Woods was finally released on April 13, 2012. Despite the cancelled DLC, the infected from Left 4 Dead games made a cameo appearance in the movie's climatic elevator scene, confirming the existence of this planned tie-in. No footage or assets from the cancelled campaign has ever surfaced to date. We have another lost game from the Resident Evil franchise, this time for the Game Boy Color. Please don't mix up this entry with Resident Evil Gaiden, because this is not what this entry is about. You see, Resident Evil was planned for the Game Boy Color adaptation in a project outsourced to a British company, Hot Gen Studios, intended for an autumn '99 release. It was frequently delayed because of programming issues, and it was ultimately cancelled in March 2000. The alternative proposal for a new game made from the ground up for the console, which became later known as Resident Evil Gaiden. But Capcom decided to approach the British company Hot Gen to undertake the ambitious task of porting Resident Evil to the Game Boy Color. Hot Gen Studios made a few titles, mostly ports of console games, but Capcom stated they wanted to make this port as close to the original PlayStation version as possible, with the characters, enemies and mechanics as expected, as well as a new pause feature to replace the ink ribbons, a feature that would be more convenient for the handheld console, which were limited by the battery life and the available time for the gamer. However, this was a big challenge for Hot Gen, and the biggest challenge was to translate the 64-bit 3D title to a 8-bit handheld console, leading to alterations in environment and constraints on sprite usage. Despite initial hopes for a March 2000 release, the project faced delays. In March, it was announced that Capcom had cancelled the project, saying they were not confident that the product would have made both consumers and Capcom happy. Dead Space is a classic game now. I mean, we did get a remastered version, but looking at Dead Space 2, it's a sci-fi survival horror game developed by Electric Arts and released in 2011. It's a sequel to the 2008 original Dead Space. The title was released on Windows, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. However, a Wii port of the game was also in development, but it was ultimately cancelled. The problem is that little is known about the Wii's port development. It would have been the second Dead Space game released on the system, following on from Dead Space Extraction, a rail shooter serving as a prequel to the original Dead Space. At least 2 people are known to have worked on this project. This included the EA employee Gary Sykes, who claimed to be a lead QA, and a freelancer Matt Spriggans, who on his linked page stated he was a level designer. Their pages not only confirmed that a Wii port was in development, but also its cancellation in 2011 in favor of other projects. No one really knows why this port was scrapped, but poor sales from Dead Space Extraction may have been a contributing factor towards the EA decision to cease development of the Wii port of Dead Space 2. I think I would not be wrong if I say that PT or Playable Teaser is one of the most popular cancelled games in recent years. This game was so hyped that even today, if you possess the game on your console, it would easily double or triple the price of it. PT is more than just a cancelled game. It's a game that led ultimately to end of an era where Hideo Kojima, a video game designer but also vice president of Konami, was thrown out. Hideo Kojima was from 1987 in Konami. The shift in the industry and the politics bothered Hideo very much, because Nintendo wanted to get away from big releases, and also his stable franchise Metal Gear Solid focused on more smaller profitable games with microtransactions. In the end, they parted ways. But why do I'm telling you this? Well, so you can understand the background that Konami perhaps didn't understand themselves when they released PT, because some speculate that PT was based on Hideo's life and relationship with Konami. There is a great video about this from The Great Debate if you're interested. This is of course a speculation, so don't take it too seriously. PT was meant to serve as a promotional teaser for the new Silent Hill game. However, the Silent Hill project was ultimately cancelled by Konami, and as a result, PT was removed from the PlayStation Store. This removal sparked disappointment among fans who admired the teaser. To give you a short idea of the plot, if you never heard of the game, the plot involves a murder/suicide hinted throughout a radio broadcast, setting the stage for a mystery. The bedroom becomes a pivotal location with a subtle introduction described as a pulsing fetus monster. As you progress throughout the game, you will find various clues and messages to unfold the story, including, like I already mentioned, the ghostly figure, cryptic messages, and changes in the house structure. The final revelation occurs outside the bedroom in a red hallway, where a fallen portrait reveals a peephole. Also, as you play, the radio broadcast becomes more aggressive, coinciding with the violent murder of a woman in a bathroom. The narrative unfolds, revealing the player, plagued by unemployment and economic struggles, succumbed to a mental deterioration. Discovering his wife's pregnancy by her manager, the player commits a heinous act, leading to this monstrous event. Despite its short existence, PT left a lasting impact on the gaming community, and it's often remembered as one of the most memorable and unsettling horror experiences in recent gaming history. Doom is a game that has been around for quite a while. Today some people even make it a challenge to port Doom on everything that has a display. The first Doom was released back in 1993 by ID Software. It stands as one of the most important video games of all time, and because of that, Doom was ported on many consoles, and it's no wonder there are few rotten apples between the ports. The Sega Saturn port was originally meant to be an entirely unique project unrelated to the PlayStation and Jaguar ports of Doom. The lead programmer of the Saturn port of Doom, Jim Bagley, wrote a custom engine based on Doom's ID Tech 1 game engine, which made full use of the Sega Saturn's hardware. At least that was the plan. Despite the console being known for not handling 3D graphics as well as the PlayStation or the Nintendo 64, this custom engine was meant to be hardware accelerated, making use of the Saturn's graphic chips. Bagley claimed that the game would run at 60 FPS, what is a very rare feature in 3D Saturn games, let alone a first-person shooter, and it could run full screen on stock Saturn hardware. But they faced significant criticism due to the rushed development, resulting one of the worst ports out there. Despite rumors suggesting smoother gameplay in the Japanese release, however, in recent years, John Lineman of Digital Foundry debunked these rumors, with both the American and Japanese version being virtually the same. ID Software founder John Carmack was dissatisfied, demanding a complete code rewrite for the software mode. Jim Bagley's prototype source code and the Saturn development kit are lost, and only beta versions and a ROM file has surfaced online recently. Carmack, in hindsight, acknowledged the limitation of the hardware and why this port would be almost impossible to make. To continue with Doom, let's talk about Doom 4, which was initially planned for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 along with the PC version. Doom 4 should have been built on the ID Tech 5 engine with modifications for dynamic environment effects. Struggling with the early development, mostly because the essence of the Doom spirit was lost, the game underwent a rolling reboot in 2011 after Bethesda, Softworks and ZeniMax Media intervened. This process, lasting until 2013, resulted in a transformed concept, eventually becoming the final Doom released in 2016. But let's talk about the development of the scrapped version. The early development starting in 2007 led to an official announcement in 2008, but Doom's 4 development faced delays, and it was notably absent from QuakeCon 2009. In 2012, screenshots and gameplay leaked, suggesting a plot about a hell invasion on Earth provoked by the Union Aerospace Corporation (UAC). By 2013, Doom 4 shifted to a new game engine, and eventually the entire project was cancelled in favor of the series reboot, revealed in a CGI teaser at E3 2014. The game was intended to depict a modern remake of Doom 2, featuring a post-apocalyptic Earth invaded by demonic forces. Not much in terms of the plot was revealed about Doom 4. The leaked footage and art style suggested that the game would have been about invasion of Hell on Earth provoked by the fictional corporation known as the UAC. The cancelled game story was initially set in the United States, New York City and Manhattan. In the fictional year of 2038, you would start as a lone surviving human who would later be destined to meet a resistance army composed of soldiers and civilians whose goal was to take down the demons and purge the hellish invasion. The gameplay mechanics evolved from the original fast-paced style to a more cinematic and linear approach, earning the internal nickname Call of Doom. And also what they included early on is the synced melee combat system, transforming into the glory kill system we would see in the final release. Another Resident Evil 4 game. This one is from the mid-2000s and it helped the gaming industry to push the brown color palette onto many games that really don't need it. But it was also a game that changed how Resident Evil games were played, and it was an instant success worldwide. We even got a remake recently, but also a remaster and a VR port. This only shows you how popular this game is. But we are here to talk about the beta version, or better to say versions, because it did take a few attempts before Capcom perfected the final product. Biohazard 4 prototype is a term used to describe the various prototype stages of Resident Evil 4. It was officially announced in 2001, and the development ran into reoccurring problems. The first problem was because it was technologically very ambitious, and the second problem was how to revitalize the series. The game got finally released in 2005, but it was very different from the early builds. The problem behind that was conflicts with the writing staff. I found few different versions of Resident Evil 4 and I want to explain each one of them to you. Initially led by Hideki Kamiya, the first version aimed for a cool and stylish action game, deviating from the series' survival horror roots. However, this concept evolved into a new franchise known as Devil May Cry. Here is a fun fact of the day. The first build was called The Fog. The development of Resident Evil 4 started at the end of 2001. The first announcement was made in November 2002 as one of the 5 exclusively developed games for the GameCube. The first restart version, known as the Fog version, directed by Hiroshi Shibata, and this version was 40% finished at the time. The game saw Leo Kennedy struggling to survive after infiltrating Umbrella's castle-like main headquarters located in Europe and featured traditional Resident Evil monsters such as zombies. During the course of the new story, which was again written by Sugimori, Leon became infected by the progenitor virus and possessed a hidden power in his left hand. The producer of the final version also pointed out that Ashley did not appear back then, though there was a different girl who was never revealed to the public, and the game featured even back then some first-person elements. The second one was the Hookman version. This image from the cancelled version shows Leo battling the mysterious Hookman. Despite the early development, the combat already embraced the over-the-shoulder view, a feature present in the final version. At E3 2003, Capcom presented a version widely recognized as the Hookman version, later named as the Maboroshi no Biohazard 4 or the Phantom Biohazard 4, which was released on the secret DVD. In Mikami's introduction to the trailer, he reassured that development was progressing smoothly and stated that the game was more terrifying than ever. The narrative unfolded in a haunted structure where Leon contracted a disease, facing paranormal foes like animated suits of armor and a ghostly figure wielding a large hook. The game had an otherworldly atmosphere with elements such as flashbacks and hallucinations, characterized by a bluish tint and shaking camera. It showcased gameplay mechanics that persisted even in the final release, including the over-the-shoulder camera and the laser sight for aiming in battles, and QuickTime events. Some features such as dialect choices were later dropped. A few minutes gameplay footage was released on the Biohazard 4 secret DVD, a Japanese pre-order bonus distributed in January 2005. And the last version we are going to talk about is the Hallucination version, which has a rudimentary storyline, abandoning the early scenarios crafted by Noboru Sugimori. In 2012, the scenario writer of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis revealed his responsibility for this version. He aimed to intensify the horror of Biohazard 4 and proposed using a specific scene from the film Lost Souls, where the main character unexpectedly finds herself in a building with a killer on the loose. This concept evolved into what later became the Hookman. The narrative involved Leo infiltrating Spencer's castle in a pursuit of truth, encountering a laboratory where deep within a young girl awakes. They embark on a journey up to the castle. Unfortunately, numerous obstacles had to be overcome, and the development cost was too high. Kawamura expressed regret, stating he felt sorry and even ashamed that Mikami had to step in and discard this version. Following this attempt, the last cancelled version reverted to featuring classic zombies. However, it was halted after a few months, never showed to the public because some developers believed that the formula was too simple. The story of the Protogen virus ended up in Resident Evil 5, and the Spencer's estate served as a backdrop of the Resident Evil 5's DLC called Lost in Nightmares, featuring Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine. At the end, Mikami took over the directional duties from Shibata and began working on the final version released in 2005, which became the game we all know. Tonight we have talked about 9 games, which sadly didn't see the release date. Some games were cancelled in early development, some were just abandoned, and some like the Resident Evil were heavily altered to the version we all know and love today. There are many more to be explored, and like always I am open to your suggestions, so comment down below and also tell me your opinions of the games we covered today. If you enjoyed this darker trip into the world of horror games, remember to support the channel. If you have any suggestions for the next video, let me know, and thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and until the next one, bye.